Hello, bonjour, ahoy, and welcome to today's post-game reaction edition of Habs Digest. I'm your host, Josh Gosse, and guys, that was a sad one. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Montreal came out and they started hot once again, but this was very reminiscent to the Carolina game where Montreal comes out, scores first, but then just gets smacked the rest of the way. Thank you all for tuning in here today. Let me know in chat if you're here, like the stream, subscribe to the channel if you're new. I was actually looking at the Steve Dangle stream as well. I think it just ended, so maybe we'll get some viewers coming in from there. But guys, what a brutal way to have a Saturday night, right? I mean, the tank rolls on, and we'll play the Team Tank animation. But, you know, at this point in the season, I think tanking is maybe not the best of ideas for Montreal. And let me say why. I think a lot of people, especially after a night like tonight, they're going to go back on the tank train and say, oh, well, you know, hey, yeah, the Leafs won, but we usually play well against them, and Bedard's more likely, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at the bottom tier teams in the NHL, you look at a team like the Ducks, you look at a team like the Sharks or the Blackhawks or the Blue Jackets, these teams are pretty far away from Montreal right now in the standings, and it's I feel like, you know, it's not a race you want to be in, the race for last place, but Montreal is doing a little too good, I think, right now to be down there. Yeah, a loss like this to Toronto sure helps our case, but at the end of the day, I just don't know if Montreal can keep pace with those other teams. However, at the same time, Montreal statistically has the most difficult schedule the rest of the way, so maybe this is just the first of many losses to come, as I see Martin saying greetings from Slovakia. Ahoy, Martin. How is it going? I love the Slovakian viewers. Other than Canadians and Americans, they're the third largest fan base of this channel, so thank you very much for stopping by. I really, really appreciate it. So, I kind of wanted to get into this game, just into especially the first period, and just kind of how things went, right? Like, early, the Habs looked good. The Habs looked really, really good. I mean, the Leafs sure had some pressure in the first couple of minutes, and it was tough. It was stressful. Jake Allen had to make a few great saves. Actually, I think even the first shift, the Leafs had the puck in Montreal zone for almost a minute and a half, but after that early little rush from Toronto, the Habs really, really bounced back. And when I say bounce back, I mean it in a serious way. They were pressuring the Leafs. The Leafs looked like they were on the back foot, of course, with their new acquisition, Ryan O'Reilly and Nola Chari playing really strong games tonight. Montreal was still able to really handle the puck in the Leaf zone in the first period, and like, it was pretty great. Like, the Leafs had a few chances too, but Jake Allen, Jake the Snake, was phenomenal on Montreal's end. So that first period was kind of intense both ways. It was a fun period to watch because it was a lot of back and forth, some very fast hockey, and Montreal looked really good. And one guy in the first period especially that I wanted to highlight is Justin Barron. Over the course of the whole game, yeah, he had a brutal one where I think it might have been the Engvall goal. No, maybe one of the Bunting goals where the puck just hopped over his stick when he had his stick right there in front of Allen trying to intercept the pass. But all the same, Barron, I thought, had a really good offensive game at the very least. His offense has started to pop. He looked really, really fast. He looked like a really, really solid player for Montreal tonight, and I think that his ability offensively could really spur a Montreal power play in the future. But yeah, like, early in the first, it was a lot of Montreal, a lot of Toronto, kind of back and forth. Barron looked good. Drouin continued his hot streak in the first period, looked really, really good, strong on the puck, which is something that Habs fans haven't really seen a lot this season, so it was really, really refreshing to see Drouin really going for it as well. But then the second period came around. And, you know, the second period for Montreal, it felt like Montreal games so far this season have gone one of two ways. You have Montreal having a really strong first, a terrible second, and a strong third, or it's the opposite, where they have a bad first and third, but a really, really strong second period in the middle. Unfortunately, what happened tonight was a second period. It was weird, because it was like the second half of the first and the first half of the second were really, really strong. But then after that, it kind of fell off a cliff. But regardless, less than a minute into the second period, as we get our first donation. Oh, thank you, Angie. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. We got a super chat, our first super chat of the stream with only 11 viewers in here. Thank you so much. Every dollar counts. Really, really, really appreciated. Oh, I love the little emote there coming with the $3. And yeah, even after a bad loss like this, you know, a 5-1 loss to Toronto, I'm sure a lot of people aren't coming in to tune into this stream simply because no one wants to talk about a Montreal loss, especially a big loss to Toronto on Saturday Night Hockey, but thank you very much for coming into the stream. Love you, Angie. $3 donation, super appreciated. But yeah, that's really, really nice to see after a pretty rough game. But in the second period, Josh Anderson continued his hot streak against Toronto, and I swear, if Josh Anderson played every single game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, he might be the favorite for the MVP of the NHL, the Hart Trophy favorite, because he seems to score in every single game. I think it's 9 goals in his last 16 against Toronto. That's nearly a 50-goal pace, I believe, when he just plays against the Leafs. But tonight he continued it. It's actually really unfortunate that Raphael Harvey-Pinard did not get an assist on that goal, because he did all the work. He tipped a pass that was meant to exit the zone for Toronto. He hustled after the puck that he tipped behind the net, and he cycled it back to the point where Jordan Harris gets it, passes to Mike Matheson. Matheson sauces a shot on net that Anderson beautifully tips past Joseph Woll, who was the goalie for Toronto tonight. Toronto having some pretty bad goalie injury issues. Of course, Samsonov and Murray both out. So it was Woll, and Shalgren was the backup tonight. I didn't have to see Shalgren, but I believe Toronto plays again tomorrow, so maybe you'll see him tomorrow if you're a Toronto fan. But yeah, Josh Anderson, another goal, puts Montreal up early, and it felt like Montreal was about to have another really, really good second period. But unfortunately, they just fell short, and it was it was kind of problematic, because after that goal, it was a theme that we've seen earlier in the season that we haven't seen as much as of late, where Montreal goes out and not too long after they do something pretty good, they get a penalty or they get caught on the back foot and something bad ends up happening. And what happened in this case was Mike Matheson got a tripping call on Mitch Marner behind Montreal's net, sending Toronto to the power play. Now, Montreal, coming into this game, was 31st on the penalty kill, and they really didn't do themselves any favors. Toronto was 6th on the power play coming into this game, and yeah, like, just getting penalties really doesn't help, right? It really doesn't help anything. Toronto ends up scoring, I think it was on that power play, to tie the game up 1-1. Michael Bunting, Bunting was kind of everywhere tonight, and a lot of Leafs fans, of course, really love Michael Bunting. There's no doubt about that. This guy's a little pest. I mean, I don't like him at all. Pretty much every Habs fan was annoyed with him tonight, going after people, but I gotta admit he does his job well, and he fills in his role well, and he's able to score on that power play to tie the game at 1. And after that, Montreal really just seemed dead. At least the top 2 lines did. I think the absence of Kirby Dach is really hurting Montreal right now. The fact that Kirby Dach's not in the lineup is really taking out a huge source of offense, especially playmaking, because without Dach, it's really just Suzuki as a primary playmaker in the entire lineup. You look at guys like, we had a line of Hoffman, Belzile, and Dadonov. None of those guys are really primary playmakers. I mean, Christian Dvorak I don't even know who he had on his wing tonight. It was just a mishmash of everything, but I think he had Drouin and Armia on his line. Actually, I think it was Armia, Dvorak, and Drouin. So Drouin is actually kind of a playmaker, and he looked good tonight, but without Kirby Dach still, it's rough for Montreal, because when you're not able to have control in the offensive zone, which is something else that Dach excels at, you're not going to create as many chances. And sure, Montreal and Toronto were even in shot attempts after the first period, with Toronto just edging them out in shots total. And at the end of the game, I think the shots were something like 38-31 or something like that. It really, there wasn't a huge disparity in shots, but the quality of a lot of Montreal shots were not great compared to the chances Toronto was getting. It felt like Jake Allen had to be on his toes pretty much every single moment that Toronto was in Montreal's zone, because Toronto was able to create so many high danger chances with great passes or what have you, and a few of them went into the back of the net, whereas Montreal, we were kind of firing from the point, taking longer shots. Toronto was not letting Montreal get near the net at all, and that was really costing them. But again, a big body like someone like Dach who can crash the net, set screens. Anderson was doing a pretty good job tonight, but it's really unfortunate when you're lacking such offensive firepower. And it was really just the bottom line. I think it was Michael Pezzetta's line. What was it? Pezzetta, Pitlick, and I'm not even sure who was on the other wing. I think it was Ullinen. That line was really playing well, along with the Drouin, Dvorak, and Armia line. So, Mike Hoffman, Dadonov did not have good games tonight. The first line for Montreal was consistent, although Suzuki's looked a little bit invisible. Harvey-Pinard and Anderson have looked really good the last few games, especially Harvey-Pinard, and of course Anderson getting a goal tonight. But really when it came down to it, and Toronto tied the game, and morale was low, it really felt like the scrappy lines, right? The third and fourth lines that were really driving to get more plays going, and they were doing great. They were forechecking. They were able to keep the puck in the offensive zone for long periods of time. And just after they started rolling and the Habs were getting multiple, like, odd man rushes, some where Mike Hoffman made some rough mistakes that I'm not really going to talk about. I saw Arpon Basu make a tweet. He said, the gap between what Mike Hoffman can do and what he thinks he can do is very high. Basu has been no stranger to slandering Mike Hoffman on Twitter. So if you want to see a few of those, go to his Twitter. But yeah, I mean, it was rough because right after these brilliant chances, Montreal looked like they were about to score. Toronto comes back. Pierre Engvall comes out from behind the net, unchecked, and just squeaks a shot past Allen, handcuffs Jake Allen, and just hits him and just rolls behind him into the back of the net. And it felt like that shifted the tone. After that goal, it felt like Montreal just had, if they had any energy left, it was out the window, and they had no more. And things just kept rolling for Toronto, and very soon after that, I think it was only like 4 or 5 minutes later, terrible Habs defense led to another Michael Bunting goal. I mean, Toronto just walked into the zone. We had, like, Montreal players were trying to step up and intercept the passes, but I think it was 3 missed interceptions and 3 overplays led to a wide open Michael Bunting on a cross crease one-timer that Jake Allen didn't quite play correctly. He slid a little bit too far. The shot was far side and it went right in for Michael Bunting. So yeah, it was rough. After that 2-1 goal from Engvall, that 3-1 from Michael Bunting was just unbelievably bad, and it was really, really rough for any Montreal fans who were watching. And then in the third period, I don't even know if I really want to talk about it, because it was mostly Toronto. The Habs did have a few decent chances, and I thought again in the third, Justin Barron looked like he was fast. Matheson, even though he took a rough penalty earlier that led to a goal, he played pretty well. He was skating pretty well. I mean, things were going all right for Matheson himself. But then in that third, it was just Toronto pressuring, and some blown coverage by Montreal just led to multiple goals, especially late in the third period. It was just awful, as we see Rick in chat saying tanking is just brutal to watch. I mean, Rick, the thing about it is, I don't even think Montreal is trying to. I think it's unintentional at this point, because coming out of the All-Star break, 3 straight wins against decent teams, like, I mean, well, maybe not all decent teams, but like the Islanders and the Oilers were decent wins for Montreal, and they were pretty convincing. But then after that, the fresh legs were gone, and they play Carolina. They get smoked. They come into this game against Toronto, and they had a pretty good period and a bit, and they were up 1-0. But the problem was after that, I saw someone actually in the Digest Media Discord say the Habs rookies are playing like veterans, and the veterans are playing like rookies. Guys like Mike Hoffman and Evgeny Dadonov were making horrible mistakes. But then, the Habs rookies were making some really solid plays, and one guy I wanted to highlight too is Jonathan Kovacevic, a guy who has just been so good for Montreal. He drew a penalty on John Tavares, which is no easy feat. Drew a hooking call, and he's always out there on the penalty kill. He skates smoothly. He makes the right plays a lot. But yeah, I mean, it just felt like the older guys were not doing their job, and Suzuki has been. I don't want to take any time to crap on Suzuki, because he's probably my favorite Hab right now, until Layton Hudson makes the team, of course. But he's just looked like he's been invisible, especially since Caulfield went down. And I feel like part of the reason is that his best buddy, Cole Caulfield's not out there with him. I feel like if Caulfield was out there, then maybe things would be different. And even if Kirby Dach was out there, it'd help. But Suzuki has not been able to put things together with this first line. Anderson and Harvey Pinard have been thriving. I mean, they've looked pretty good. And of course, Suzuki does play a role in that. Even if he's not on the score sheet every night, he's definitely helping those guys produce. But at the same time, when you're not on the score sheet for that many games in a row, and it's a guy who was on like 80, 90 point pace earlier in the season, I know small sample size, but he looked genuinely really good, especially with that line with him, Caulfield, and Dach together. It was just really rough to see. It's been really rough to see him really not have that level of effort. It feels like Suzuki's almost getting down on himself, because Nick Suzuki is the best player on the Montreal Canadiens, and when he's on, he is on. So hopefully he bounces back soon. We all really hope Nick Suzuki is back strong. as soon as Montreal's next game, because right now his line mates are getting it done, but he's not, unfortunately. And also another thing to talk about tonight, Corey Schoeneman made his season debut. He was around last year a bit, if you guys remember. The Habs had a lot of injury trouble again, last year, not just this year. And Corey Schoeneman stepped in a couple times to fill in, and he actually got some power play time last season, which was a bit surprising. And I thought in his limited minutes tonight, he looked pretty good as well. So as sort of a, it's bad if you're Chris Weidman. If Arbor Jackeye goes out, Weidman is the guy. You have him under contract. It was a multi-year contract. He comes in. Arbor Jackeye's out. Weidman's like, finally, I'm going to get to play. The Habs call up Corey Schoeneman. Yeah, I know Weidman plays the right side, but look at the top pairing tonight. It was Jordan Harris and Mike Matheson, both lefties. So Weidman, I think his days of playing any type of consistent minutes in the NHL are over. I think we knew that earlier in the season. He has looked awful. He played last game against Carolina, was the worst player on the ice, bar none. So yeah, he won't be there for very, very much longer, I'm sure, if Montreal, maybe we got him under contract till next year, but who knows if he'll even be around to play those minutes. We see Alex saying, some analysts say Suzuki plays too many minutes, and I think that's actually not a bad point. Suzuki's minute totals are quite high. He plays over 20 minutes almost every single night, which is not crazy for your number one center. But when you're on the first power play and the first penalty kill, and you're the guy when the team needs to get a goal, it's rough, especially on a team like this. Like, when you're out there so much, Suzuki is running himself dry, right? He's running himself dry on the ice right now because he's always on the ice, giving his all in whenever he can. He makes some good defensive plays, but when you're reaching like 22, 23, 24 minutes a night for a team that's just not really winning that much, when your best buddy and top winger is out, it's got to be tough on Suzuki. So maybe as the season goes on, St. Louis will be able to give him fewer minutes, especially when Kirby Dach comes back and can play some of those extra center minutes, especially Sean Monahan, too, who can take over a bit. So, yeah, I think these injury troubles are just compounding on that Suzuki playing too much points. So, great point, Alex. Martin says, I don't know if it's Martin or Martine, you can let me know, but Josh, congratulations on reaching another milestone for your video YouTube channel, 4,000 subscribers. You make great videos. Thank you, Martin, or Martine, whatever it is. We really appreciate all the support. 4,000 is a huge milestone. It took us a while to get from 3,000 to 4,000, but I feel like 4,000 to 5,000 will be super fast, especially as we approach the trade deadline. We get near the end of the season and the draft, where everyone's going to be talking about Montreal, and we really appreciate all of our fans, especially all you dedicated ones. This is compared to our other streams, there's not a ton of people here. We usually have a big chat rolling, but of course it's a 5-1 loss to the Leafs on a Saturday night. You're not going to have a ton of people in here, but I really appreciate all you guys who are here and the true fans who decided to tune in. So thank you very much again. Alex McLean says, hey guys, we got a couple of Alexes in here. Hey Alex McLean and Alex Vachon, how are you guys doing? Thank you for coming into the stream. We got about 20 people here now. That's not bad. We usually peak around 40 something. So by the way, guys, if you haven't liked the stream, just leave it a like now. Once the stream is over, this will get posted as a video on YouTube for people to come watch and react to the game maybe tomorrow if they can't catch it tonight. So if you guys leave a like, it really helps boost this video once it gets posted. So if you could do that for me right now, thank you very much. It'd be appreciated. But yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot else to talk about from this game. If you guys have anything, let me know there in the chat. But I think what it comes down to is Montreal really tried their best, and I think they put in a lot of effort early, and it worked for a while. But when you put in a lot of effort early with a lot of guys who are not used to playing consistent NHL minutes, like these guys are basically career AHLers, having to play at the NHL pace, having to play with the NHL physicality for so many minutes every single night, it starts to get tiring. And while the fresh legs were great right after the All-Star break, this is just game 2 of like really good opponents. Carolina and Toronto are both favored to probably go quite far in the playoffs this season, even though of course Toronto has that curse that I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with, whether or not they'll make it out of the first round. But regardless, they're always 2 very good regular season teams. And Montreal has been able to hold their own until a certain point in the game. And I hope that's not something that continues long into the end of this season, where Montreal is able to really stick with the team for a little while until they just start getting outworked, because that to me doesn't signify necessarily a skill gap in the 2 teams. That to me signifies a little bit of a lack of effort and maybe lack of conditioning. I don't want to go out and speculate that Montreal's conditioning isn't great, because I don't really see that when I watch. But if you look at the trends of the games that Montreal has been losing, at least recently, it's some solid play pretty early, but then the play drops off a cliff somewhere in the second period, and they're just not able to recover. late in the game when you're trying to really get these big shifts, it's really just the fourth line guys, the guys who have the fresher legs, the guys who know that they really need to, work really hard for that extra ice time. Those are the guys that are coming in and they're getting you those, feisty possessions, those scrappy possessions to keep the puck in the offensive zone. So, but when you get these top line guys like Suzuki, like Alex mentioned, who's playing a ton of minutes every single night, and your first line Suzuki, Anderson, Harvey Pinard, these guys are getting tired. And so when it comes down to it late in the game and you need a goal, the legs just aren't there and Montreal ends up collapsing. Now, at the end of the day, we all know that we want Montreal to get a solid draft pick. That's no secret. Connor Bedard is the grand prize this year. I don't know if Montreal is going to be able to slip down to there, but regardless, if you look at a lot of analysts talking about this draft, it's a very, very deep draft where the top 10, all 10 of those guys look like they could be solid NHL players. So, and again, Florida recently, they lost tonight to Nashville 7-3, and Montreal, of course, if you guys didn't know, has their pick unprotected this year for trading away Ben Sherratt last season at the trade deadline. So, if Montreal continues to slide, they stay, 5th or 6th last, and Florida continues to lose, because right now they're right on the edge of the draft lottery. I think they're technically the best team in the draft lottery. So, as of yesterday when I checked, because I haven't checked today, I don't know if someone maybe went below Florida in the standings. As of yesterday, Montreal had 2 shots in the draft lottery. And those picks can move up to not only just first, but they can move up to 2nd or something. So Montreal has a solid chance at landing a very good pick. Again, not advocating for losing, because winning, I think, breeds development. But at the same time, if you have this many injury issues, although Sean Monahan and Caden Gooley look like they're about to come back, same thing with Joel Edmondson. They're progressing very well, and they should be back. I think Monahan, they said he might be back for Tuesday, which would be pretty awesome. I think Gooley's another week or 2 out. Edmondson's kind of more questionable. No one's really sure about him. I'm sure there's a lot of trade talk surrounding him and Monahan as well. But with these players coming back from injury, Montreal might try and win a few more games here and there. But with Caulfield out for the season, Slavkovsky out for the season, who knows how long the losing will continue. And I guess we'll keep you guys updated as we get closer to the draft itself. But that'll do it for this game reaction edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Guys, we just hit 4,000, but that doesn't mean we want to stop. We want to go all the way to 5,000 and well beyond that. I mean, we truly believe we put out some of the best Montreal Canadiens content on YouTube. Really appreciate everyone who tunes in. Thank you everyone who, on a Saturday night after a 5-1 blowout, who tuned into this stream. Really appreciate every single one of you guys. Martin, Alex, Rick, Angie, of course. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse. We'll catch you in the next one.